everybody. Welcome back to the Smorgasboard podcast. Today it's just three of us, and we're going to talk about video games. And specifically, we're going to talk about a video game that's very near and dear to one of us in particular, and kind of a game that's got like very interesting history, I think. And I think it's a neat conversation to have, even with people who like don't play video games or don't keep up with it, because really this game is kind of a case study in how a business should handle bad press. Like it's really cool. We'll just get into it. So the game is No Man's Sky, and the person who is absolutely in love with this game in particular is Chris. So Chris, why do you love No Man's Sky?
I mean, there's
Why is it your favorite game ever?
I wouldn't say my favorite game ever, and I feel like even though I have the most hours played out of the three of us,
Yeah.
but I still feel like quite a newbie to those out there who are in the No Man's Sky community, because there's people out there who have 1,000 hours plus playing this game, and I'm sitting here with I think 250 was what I had last night whenever I checked.
I mean, that's
So
no slouch though. Like
yeah.
250 hours into a game is like, I would consider you at least like quite knowledgeable at 250 hours.
Literal days in game. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like my second or third most played game on Steam, but yeah, there's a lot to like about No Man's Sky, and especially now. I think this is 3 years removed from when it launched. I think it launched in 2018. I might be wrong about that. But yes, and like you said, it's got a very interesting history just outside of the game. I mean, even if you don't play video games, you probably heard of No Man's Sky because it was a big meme on the internet for its terrible launch and where it started from. If people are unfamiliar with it, whenever it launched in 2018, going in, it first previewed I think in 2016 at some expo, and instantly began getting traction because who doesn't love to explore space and have starships and flying to different planets, and just if you're a Star Wars fan, Star Trek fan, just overall space geek, it tickled that bone that everybody, or tickled that itch that everybody wanted to have out of a space exploration game. And it got the hype, and in 2018 when it launched, it fell pretty hard on its face.
Yeah, it was pretty much overall panned by like not only like users but like reviewers too, because a lot of companies will like review games prior to their launch and kind of give you like a basic idea. And I think sometimes it's supposed to be like the same build that gets pushed out to the public, but I think that sometimes like the press gets like a pre-build maybe before the final release, and they get to maybe play a slightly different version of the game. But I think that, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think No Man's Sky was pretty much like review censored, right? Like
Yeah.
did they even give out like review copies for like the media to try?
They did actually, and they were under what's the term?
embargo, like a review embargo or something.
Yeah, there's another term, and it'll come to me later. But basically,
Like
NDA
censored or something?
an NDA, a non-disclosure
Okay.
act. So you weren't able to talk about it. You weren't able to post videos until launch. You weren't yada yada yada. But one of the controversies 2 weeks before launch was that someone who got an early copy of the disc for PS4 sold their copy of No Man's Sky on eBay, and it went for thousands of dollars of this guy just selling it. It got sold. I think that guy got a lawsuit or something, but the person who bought it played it, streamed it, put a video on YouTube about it, and it further added to the downfall of No Man's Sky. But so yeah, there was early access to it by reviewers and by a handful of people. I don't know how many people actually got a copy of it or who got a copy of it early, but there were early press releases of it.
I think what's important about all of this too to keep in mind, like with the fact that like media companies and like official like critics had to like sign an NDA, or like they were censored, or like whatever it was, that they couldn't actually like report about the game pre-release, is that like there's so much hype built around this game from like the community. Like people were absolutely like enthralled with this game. But I think what's important to note is also that like the developers themselves had like hyped this game up, like I would say above and beyond what a studio normally hypes like one of their games. Especially the fact that one thing to keep in mind is that like the developer of No Man's Sky is a company called Hello Games, and they were pretty small like when this started. They had created a few games prior to No Man's Sky, which were like arcade type games, like games that you would pay like maybe $10 or $15 for, like a digital copy on like your computer or on your like gaming console, and that they were like the mechanics were like fairly simple. Like I think the games they created, I think it was like Joe Danger is the name of like the game that they originally created. Like that was their
Joe
first
Danger.
like big game that came out, and I think it was moderately successful. And then like the sequel to it was like, it did okay, but it wasn't like it wasn't anything like in particularly like great. And then it's just like, okay, we've put out these two like arcade games, and now they're like swinging for this massive like AAA release, and they're promising like all of these like massive features. So like to give a kind of a better idea of like what exactly they were promising, Chris kind of mentioned earlier that this is like a game that's big into like space exploration. Well, the big thing is that they were promising like all of these like procedurally generated worlds that you could fly to, and they were basically just saying like, not only are all of these worlds like unique to one another, but there are like hundreds of worlds to explore. And like the chances of there were so many things that they promised, it's hard to keep track of them, because like they were promising that you can meet up with friends, and like there was a multiplayer aspect. And then at one point they had this really weird tweet where they said like, no, after saying that the game was multiplayer, they said that if you're looking for a multiplayer experience out of No Man's Sky, you may be disappointed, because in a world so vast, the idea that two players could actually meet up is so like unlikely. So they were really pushing the envelope with like, hey, this is how massive our game is, and how like distinct it is from anything else that's ever been put out. And it's like, oh wow, like this is nuts. So they built it up and built it up and built it up, and then finally it just all kind of like fell on its face like day one of release. Like everybody started playing it, and like all of these features, like some of the features were in it, like all of like the worlds were in it, like each one of the worlds was kind of like procedurally generated, and the creatures that inhabited them, I think to some extent were like also like like randomly generated. But there was like no multiplayer aspect whatever. Like two guys like on Twitch, I think, linked up their streams, and they were in the exact same galaxy on the exact same planet overlooking like the exact same basin, and they couldn't see each other. And it was just like all of this hype that was built up over like 2 years from like 2016 to 2018. It was just like unraveling at the seams. It's like, so for a relatively small company to like promise something so massive and essentially like double down on it, like there have been flops before, but I don't know if there was anything quite as like catastrophic or like in the public eye as like No Man's Sky was when it like dropped.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the guys on Twitch do that within like a couple of days after release?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So it was like, yeah, you could meet up, but it's going to take you forever, and they do it within days. They get to the same place, and it's not multiplayer.
And
at
the
all.
and the star, if I had to pick one person to kind of like in like the history of No Man's Sky, the one guy that like stands out in the whole thing is the lead developer slash like head guy at Hello Games, which is a gentleman by the name of Sean Murray. And he like, so the poor guy, like when this happened and like it was all over like Twitter and social media that like these two players had met up in the same spot but they couldn't see each other in a game that promised multiplayer. Sean Murray basically like tweeted out and said, "Isn't it great that two like players found each other?" Like he was hyping up that they found the same location, but they were just like, "Sean, it's not multiplayer." Like, yeah, you lied. Like, this is not multiplayer, and it was just an absolute mess. I mean, reviewers were panning it, players were panning it. I think it wasn't so much that it was, well, it was one thing was that they pretty much lied about a bunch of stuff that actually came out, but a lot of people's complaints was that it was just boring.
Yeah, I know a friend of ours. That was his biggest complaint about it, was that it was fun, but it just got repetitive too quick, and that's why he stopped playing it.
Yeah, because like the basic algorithm of the game was like land on a planet, collect resources, fill up your ship, deposit, your findings, move on to the next planet, rinse and repeat. It was like very much like the same thing for every planet that you went to, and it was like, well, like, yeah, the planets are pretty and like it's cool that all of this stuff is like randomly generated or like whatever, or like was uniquely generated. I don't but it's still like if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's going to get old like really fast. And I don't know if they were just hoping that it would be enough, because like that kind of cookie cutter thing kind of feels very indicative of like a company that just makes like flash games. Because it's like when you look at arcade games, like if you're a big video gamer and if you were ever like bought like Xbox Live arcade games or like PlayStation Store exclusives or anything like that, like any game that you pick up for like $15 generally is going to have like one mechanic that they really like hone in on, and it's just that throughout the game. And usually it's like a mechanic that's kind of like addictive or that you can kind of build up like over time. Like if anybody's ever played like old flash games, like or like a good example would be any of like the like I call them like tossing based games, like on your phone. Like there's a game called Toss the Turtle where like you have a slingshot, you just like try and launch a turtle and see how far you can get the turtle to go, and you can get like upgrades, like you can upgrade your slingshot, you can get things to help the turtle like bounce, and the whole goal is to try and get like farther and farther distance each time you play. And it's like, yeah, you do it a couple times, but then you get a new upgrade, and it's like, oh, suddenly you can go farther or faster or whatever. And it's like everything builds on that, and it's super addictive because you want the next upgrade so you can do like more stuff. And that's like kind of the formula that like flash games and arcade games like really like narrow in on to keep people coming back and playing. And it was almost like Hello Games did the same thing with No Man's Sky. It's like, okay, here's kind of like a repetitive mechanic, but they forgot like the addictive part. It's like, okay, what's going to bring me back and keep doing this over and over and over again? Instead, it was just like, oh, well, there are new planets, and this one's like, I got a different color palette than this one, and there are different animals on this one, or different plants, or like whatever. It's like, here's all of these like different things in the environment. It's like, yeah, but I'm still doing the exact same thing with like no real reward. And it's like, you want me to do this for like what, like 30 plus hours and then like be happy with like the $60 price tag on your game? Like, it's it's just not, it's not possible. And you know, like, that's totally speculative. It's like I don't know what the Hello Games developers were thinking when they pumped it out, but it's just interesting to me that like their biggest hits were these kind of like really like addictive, like one like kind of single pony show kind of thing. Like, you know, they got one nice thing to really show off and like nothing else other than that. And the fact that that just seems like it's the foundation that No Man's Sky was built on.
Yeah, I mean, even now in No Man's Sky, there's, I mean, like now we have a full quest line which they're expanding upon in the next in the next update. That's confusing because there's actually an update called Next, um, but we're getting more story. But we have a full-fledged storyline, and then you have some in-game things you can do and some stuff you can like work up to that does take a good amount of time to get to. But really, No Man's Sky, it still goes on that same formula of go to a new system to get this mineral or this whatever, this element, and then upgrade your ship or upgrade your suit, and then go to this system and do the same thing. So it still has that repetitive vibe to it. But yeah, I don't know if that just comes from them being an arcade game developer, or if it's just what the game was meant to be. I can't say that for them. It as being somebody, I bought it, I pre-ordered it, and played it on launch day, and I think I played somewhere between 50 and 60 hours of it after launch, and I was one of the few who was fine with what the game was. I mean, bummed that it didn't have multiplayer, but um, I mean, I was fine. Pretty much play games by myself, anyways, for the most part. So I was fine with it. Kind of just ignored what everybody was saying about it. But there was definitely a lot left out that was promised. But I think the team themselves, being a small team, I think stuff really just caught up with them. Of They put out this game, they had the idea for their game in 2016, they put it out, and then just caught fire, and then it just kept going, and then Sony signing them to a deal just added gasoline to that fire and lit a big and made it even bigger to what the expectations they had to pump out for this game in their timeline. Because right up until launch, in July. It was supposed to launch in July of 2018, and No Man's Sky, Hello Games was like, we need more time. This isn't done. And and Sony was like, we can give you another month. Like, this has to release. It's too hyped up. You can't delay this. It's got to release. So then they're like, okay. And then they released it in August, and it fell. Which, I like, in their development, you can't blame them for, Sony coming up to them and being like, hey, we want to back your game. You don't turn that kind of thing down being a small indie company. I believe at one point, Sean Murray even like sold his house to keep Hello Games to keep Hello Games afloat during the development. I don't know if that was, I think that was pre No Man's Sky. But
yeah, I think that was to like get their company off the ground.
Yeah.
Because prior to starting his own company, I think Sean had worked on a couple other like fairly large titles. Like I think he worked on, I want to say he worked on like one of the, like he was the creative director for like maybe one of the Forza games or something like that. Like I think there was a rather like large title that he had worked on. So like he had like experience. But, as any small business owner knows, when you like break out on your own, it's a gamble. Like, you can try and take like the skills that you've learned and like co-opt them into like an independent run company, but there is a lot of sacrifice that goes into that. And the fact that he was willing to like put up his own house, like just to keep the his company going, shows that, like, I think it shows that he has like pride in what he does and what he wants to do. And like, he never set I it's my honest opinion that he never set out to like cheat anybody, obviously.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing that you have to ask yourself when like when a big company, when a big developer, and I want to make this comparison later, we don't have to talk about it in depth right now, but when you have like when you have a large developer like Bethesda that offers you like the moon, in a video game, like everything, like everything you could possibly want, like, you want the moon, I'll lasso the moon for you. Like, if a AAA developer offers you that and then just drops it at your feet and it's crap, then most of the time they're just like, yeah, whatever. Like, yeah, it's a steaming pile of garbage, but we make millions of dollars and you guys bought this crap up anyway, so whatever. And like, in that moment, it's like, genuinely, like, does Bethesda just think I'm an idiot and I'll just buy whatever crap they churn out just because of who they are and what they put out in the past? So it's like, you wonder, to what level did they actually put effort into this? Yeah, and like, how much of it is genuine and how much of it was just a payday for them? Like, oh, you know what people will buy? They'll buy a new Fallout game no matter what we like, whatever it is. As long as it's got the Fallout title on it, let's just push it out, and what happens happens. Who cares? But with like a smaller company that's like essentially being funded by this one guy who's like, doing everything he can to keep cash flow coming in, and he like puts his heart and his soul in it, and he tries everything that he can do to push out a game that he promises, and it still drops. It's like, yeah, it sucks for everybody, but obviously he cared, or else he wouldn't have like put himself at so much financial like risk. Like, I'm pretty sure there were like lawsuits drawn up over like Bethesda's like failed launch of Fallout 76. Like, people were claiming like fraud and all kinds of crazy stuff against a game developer for like not delivering on what they promised. For a company like Bethesda that's put out games for like several years now, I mean, for crying out loud, I think Bethesda put out, to give you an idea of how long Bethesda's been around, they put out a Home Alone game for the SNES.
Yeah.
Like, they've been around for a long time. And, so when you think about the popular titles, for like anybody who's not in the loop with, video gaming, the Fallout franchise that Bethesda created is extraordinarily profitable and has like a ridiculous like fan base following. Like, people love Fallout. And the fact that they were able to just kind of like drop this like awful, terrible game. Like, people have their criticisms of other games that they've like released, but I think Fallout 76 at the time that it came out was just universally like despised on a level that was probably equal to No Man's Sky when it came out. But the major difference between the two is that Bethesda didn't really care that their game flopped. They were just kind of like, whatever, next project. But for like a small indie company like Hello Games, there is no next project. It's like, like this was your like coming out party, and you tripped and fell into the cake. So it's like, what do? You can't just go out and buy a new cake. You don't have the money for it. You got to make the best with what you got. And Hello Games kind of faced like this moment where it was like, well, what do we do? Do we just kind of like crawl under our rock and die, or do we do something about it? And I think that's kind of where this story of a indie game developer like reaching for the stars and falling short kind of gives its like hopeful uptick, and it's like their developer, like Sean Murray, basically made the decision, listen, we're gonna go radio silence for like half a year, and we're not gonna respond to tweets. I thought this was incredible. He ordered like all of it. I don't know to what extent a boss can actually like has the power to do this, but he basically told all of his employees like to stay off social media and to not look at any like negative reviews that were being sent in from like reviewers. So if somebody was putting something on Twitter or like a comment on like the Steam page or whatever, he was like, don't look at those. I'm going to be the only person that's looking at those. So he like took the burden on himself as like the single point of contact to read through all of these awful like tweets and comments and stuff about how their game sucks and how it's broken and all this stuff. And he basically like compiled a list of all of these like, you know, like how many comments are from people who have actually bought the game, how many comments are from people who have just heard about the issue secondhand and are just like crap posting for the heck of it, you know. And then it's like, okay, well, now that we have like the actual like customer base, what seems to be like the most outrageous issue that they're dealing with that we can address first. And then it was like he basically created like a spreadsheet of just like, here's the issues that the fans have, here's the things that we promised that we didn't get put through, and then here's like a priority listing for each one of them. And then the team basically just went down that priority list one at a time and just started like hammering out all of the issues in the game. And they were absolute radio silent for 6 months, and everybody basically assumed that they just gave up, right? Like, we haven't heard anything from them in 6 months. They basically made us pay full price for like a less than half finished game, and everybody's just out of $60, and this is just kind of like a lesson learned type thing. And then suddenly they dropped the first like DLC, which was free, by the way. Like, you know, they realized if we make people pay for this, they are going to hate us even more. And a comparison I will make to another game is Destiny 2. And here's my problem with that game. This was also like a full price $60 game that we purchased, and then they dropped like DLC that was like, you know, I think it was like $20 or something like that. It was like the first DLC that they dropped was like maybe $20, and that's pretty common, right? But then, like, you know, however many months later, I don't remember how many months it was, but after they had dropped the first DLC, the next thing that they dropped was basically like a retcon of the game in the form of downloadable content that was going to cost another $60.
And
that
it
was
was not
essentially
included in the expansion pass.
Yeah. So it's not included in that first $20 that you spent. And then they're like, "Oh, you want the actual full game?" It's basically what this was. It was like, we gave you half of a game, you played it for like a year, and then we gave you some like downloadable content, you know, to keep you interested. And now it's like, okay, here's like the actual game in its entirety. And by the time you've bought all of it, you've paid like $140 for like the base game. And it's like, that's highway robbery.
Yeah, the big thing that got me was right before Destiny 2, right before that update, they put out a video, and it was like a hype video, and it was like, look, and like the developers were like, oh, it's great, and they're like, look, we've been listening to all your feedback, we've heard you, we know what you want, and we're giving you all that. And they said all the features that we all wanted, that were promised in the base game, that were big problems for the base game at launch, and even through the first two DLCs were still problems. And like, we're giving you all of this, and then they gave us like what it was called, the update was called or whatever, and then that was it in the video. And then it came out later that it was going to be $60 for this add-on, and then another $20 on top of that if you wanted to get the second season pass.
Yeah.
So as being somebody who already spent $80 on it to get the game and the first season pass, which I didn't even play the second DLC. I played the first one, which was an hour's worth of game. It literally took us an hour to run through it. We did it together. We ran through it in an hour, and that was it. But yeah, so for a company like that, for Bungie to just, as a AAA studio, to just shoot their player base in the leg, like just well, not even the leg, in the back, like full
Yeah.
blown sawed-off shotgun in the back. And it's surprising because I don't see as many people outraged by it as we are.
I know,
And I don't understand that. And it's one of the games. It's a reason that I will never buy another Bungie game ever.
Oh,
is
yeah.
because they have just. I don't have to worry about Halo because 343 Studios took over that.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
yeah, if Bungie comes out with any more Destinies or whatever they come out with, I won't do it. But in the inverse, No Man's Sky fell flat on its face, and I literally just the other day bought their newest game, Hello Games' newest game, which is The Last Campfire, just to support No Man's Sky because they have given 16, I just counted, major DLCs to their game, major updates to their game. Like, these are updates, but they could be considered DLCs because they add so much to each update of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that, like, that many just, like, updates or patches or whatever, they've pumped it all out, and they've pumped it all out for free, you know? And it's like, listen, you paid $60, because it's like, you know, like them, and it's funny that, like, Hello Games and Bethesda were kind of like on the same path for like a hot minute, right? It's like, we screwed up, we realized we screwed up, and we've put our like nose to the grindstone, and we're giving you what you want. And then like the big deviation there is that Bethesda's like, but you better compensate us for the time we spent. Like, you know, we did this for you, so maybe you could do something for us. And No Man's Sky was basically like, no, we screwed up big time. Like, this is our apology to you to keep our fan base, like, to get you guys back and to win back the trust of the public. You know, because at the end of the day, it's like, for a small indie developer, if you don't have the customer base's trust, the next game you pump out, kind of like the reason why the three of us have sworn off Bungie games until the day we die, is because they basically just gave us the middle finger, and they were like, yeah, we'll give you what you want for an additional $80. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You gave us a crap game, so you should, apologize and do something about it. Like, have some integrity. And it's not like it's a handful of trolls who are like, this game's bad. It's like, no, when the majority of your player base has an issue, like, you should take that seriously. Because it's like, because I don't think Bungie has the clout anymore to just, like, it doesn't have the Bethesda clout of, I can drop a crap game and move on, Because, I would say maybe in its Halo heyday, yeah, it probably could do that. And I'd say the Bethesda, or not Bethesda, but Bungie is going to be fine, because they still have that like die-hard player base, which I think is what helps keep it alive. Why like people were seemingly okay with dropping another $80 on that game, because they were just like, oh, well, like, it's additional content that's going to keep the game alive for like years and years to come, and we can keep playing it and playing it and playing it, and it's not going to get old. And it's like, you're just buying into it. Like, they've got you by the short and curlies, man. Like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Not like, to mention, I believe that the original story that we played through in Destiny 2 has been completely retconned.
Yeah, it's like they rewritten. Yeah, they rewritten the story basically.
It's free to play now, and it with having to pay for like the new expansion, the newest expansion if you want to play it. And yeah, I a while back got it on Game Pass and launched it, and it the story starts off completely different. It picks up where we left off pretty much, and it's crazy.
Jeez.
And like, I don't know if you like, it's gone from like battle.net. You can't get it on there anymore, and so they just went straight to Steam whenever it went free to play. So you're completely out of that experience. What we paid $60 for, we're completely out of that experience.
How do you just rewrite your game?
Yeah.
Like, that's so crazy to me that they did that, on top of charging you extra money. Like, basically saying, like, oh, this game doesn't exist anymore. Forget that last $80 you dropped. We need another $80 for the real deal. It's like, it's
Yeah,
so frustrating.
I need to go look it up, because I remember at the time that when we had stopped playing Destiny 2, pretty much the whole fan base had stopped playing Destiny 2 at that time, because there was no in-game content, and I'm pretty sure the fan base went back. I know there was one point in time that more people were playing Destiny 1 than they were playing Destiny 2. They just went back to Destiny 1 and kept playing it.
Wow.
They were just like, we're
over
this
it.
game doesn't have any, yeah, we're over it. We're just going back to Destiny 1. It's a much better game. And it was at the time.
Oh my
I played
god.
a lot of Destiny 1, and
That is absolutely nuts.
it was way better. I need to look up like the actual analytics of that and like Steam charts from that time period, because it'd be interesting to see. Well, I guess there wouldn't be Steam charts at that time because it was on Battle.net, but or Battle.net.
But what's baffling, what really hits me about Bungie, like this this conversation has kind of morphed into an ethics conversation of AAA developers, but it's like Bungie had done things in the past to show that they were, like, listening to their player. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a weapon that came out in I want to say it was one of the expansions, and maybe it's called like the Lens of Ra or something like that.
The Lens of Osiris, I think.
Yeah, the Lens of Osiris. That's what it was. And basically, it was just this like laser beam, and when they added it, the gun was so broken that you could basically like barely drag the beam across another player, and it would kill them like instantly.
Yeah.
So it was because, like, basically the way the weapon worked was whenever the beam made contact with a surface, it started to expand like an area of effect. And I don't remember how far it expanded, but it was like if you hit a player, it started expanding on that player. And it was just like the damage output was so heavy, you can melt like even the tankier players in like a second.
Yeah.
It was absolutely ridiculous. And everybody was so upset about that because like the handful of people who could get one were absolutely cleaning up in like the PvP matchmaking. And everybody was so mad, and Bungie was like, listen, it's going to take us a few days to patch this. And they were like, but what we'll do in the meantime is that we'll give everyone the gun.
Dump gasoline on that fire.
So it was like, if we can't fix it immediately, because it was going to be like, because I think at the time when it was on Battle.net, like servers didn't reset until like Tuesday at like midnight or something. So it was going to be Tuesday at midnight before they were actually able to roll out the next patch or something like that. And this was like Friday. So they were like, there's going to be a solid 3 days of this gun being out in the wild, and there was nothing they could really do about it. So they were like,
weekend of madness.
Yeah, so they were like, okay, I got an idea. It's easier for us to like, just add this gun to everybody's inventory and then just like send out a message through battle.net saying, listen, we're addressing the issue. We're going to have it patched by Tuesday. But in the meantime, here's this ridiculously overpowered gun. Have fun. So for a solid 3 days, I like to refer to it as like the laser tag weekend, because it was just nothing but like everyone in matchmaking was using the Lens of Osiris, and it was hilarious. You'd go into like PvP, and it's just lasers, man, all over the place. It is like, how cool is it that they did that? That they, they could have just sat on it and just been like, okay, whenever it'll be fixed on Tuesday, who cares? But people were so upset about it. They were like, well, we just can't let it sit for 3 days. Like, people are going to get frustrated. They're not going to play over the weekend. And, like, it's not a good look. So they were like, well, let's even the playing field. And it's like, that's really great, and it shows that you care. But then it's like the same company that did that was like, had enough self-awareness to, listen to their player base and do something about it and do something nice for them when it came to like things that were promised or like completely rewriting the game and like the story and everything, basically delivering you a new game that's going to overwrite your old game. They asked for money for it. And it's like, well, what happened to the other Bungie? What happened to the cool guy that gave me a laser gun so that I could like have fun for a few days while they fixed their game? Like, where was that guy when you're doling out this $80 price tag for like the same crap with like a different coating on it? Like, what the heck, man? And that's what makes it really, really disappointing when you know that they, at one point, they were like, we care about our players, and then at some point they were just like, screw it, make them pay $80 for the same game, and make it impossible to do anything else unless they pay that $80. It's like, how can you? I don't understand how like even the diehard fans could justify that price. Like, I don't care if they're still playing to this day, and the the Destiny 2 servers have at least like a decent player base for like the next like 5 or 6 years. Like, it just seems extraordinarily unethical to basically ask for like that much money for essentially a rewrite of the game and brand it as though, hey, we listen to you, we're making the changes that you guys want, but you got to pay for it. It's like, why didn't you just do it right the first time?
I would have loved to have gotten Justin, my brother, in on this discussion had I known it was going to go into Destiny 2, because he's the type of person that bought every one of those expansions we talked about. He sunk a couple of thousand hours in the game, and if they brought another DLC out tomorrow, he'd buy it. So I'd kind of like to see that perspective.
Got one coming up, so.
Well, Justin will be the one who will be buying, and I'd love to see that perspective. We need to get him on here and have a discussion about it sometime.
Just about Soul Destiny 2, yeah.
Man,
yeah.
Maybe that'll be next week's podcast.
Yeah.
We'll pull Justin in here and berate him for why he's a diehard fan and why he's willing to throw his money. I mean, At the end of the day, it's if you're listening and you're the kind of person like Justin who you love the game so much that you kept dropping money on it, that's fine. It's your money. You can do with it what you want. But just remember that when you keep like feeding the beast, it's just gonna get bigger.
Yeah.
Like, you're not the only way that you can send a clear message to game companies like this is to stop giving them money.
That's the only way they hear it, is when they stop getting money.
Yeah, like you have to just stop, because not everyone is a Hello Games.
Yeah.
Like I believe to my core that like genuinely, like, yeah, they screwed up big time and they like stepped in it, and that's all on them. There's a couple factors that kind of play into it, like pressure from Sony and them being such a small company, and maybe they did like overreach with expectations a little bit, but it's like, they I don't know.
16 free DLCs.
Yeah, 16 free DLCs.
Over 2 years, almost 3 years now.
Now, let me ask you something, Chris. In No Man's Sky, is there paid cosmetics?
No, there's no item mall at all, which is something I'll get into. I want there to be paid cosmetics in No Man's Sky. They've done 16 free updates, and the player base as a whole of people playing No Man's Sky have said that multiple times. So like, put in like ship cosmetics or freighter cosmetics, or like, no one wants. I mean, even if you put in stuff that gives you, there's no advantage to be gained in No Man's Sky. It's not a PvP game, and I don't think it ever will be a PvP game. So there's no real advantage to. There's no pay to win that you could get in No Man's Sky. If you want to increase the time, it takes from you to get to the end game, then go for it. But the whole fan base has been saying for updates now, or DLCs now, to be like, hey, start charging us for this stuff. We want to support you. And that's why people go and buy not because it's not a bad, or it's not a good game or anything, but that's why people go and buy Last Campfire, is because they want to support Hello Games and keep fueling them. Once again, that's how they listen, is by money. And and that's how you got to feed the beast that you like and not feed the beast that you don't like.
Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's crazy to me that it's like the fans are literally begging to give them money. Like we want to give you money because like you did such a great job at handling like just an absolute hot mess. Like I would go as far as to say that what they did with this game is unprecedented. Like no one expects a game developer of any size, I would say, to go to the lengths that they went to build this game back up and to regain faith in the community. Like, it's incredible. And the fact that, like, so I don't know if you guys, I think you guys have seen the Internet Historian video about No Man's Sky. It's a very good video that goes into much greater detail about, the whole story from beginning to end. But the fact that, like, the fans even paid for a sign. Like, there was a GoFundMe that went out to put a sign up across from Hello Games, like, studio, like, across from their building, like, a thank you sign that, like, the fans paid for it to put up so that the developers would see it every day when they came in and when they left work. Like, the fan base, loved what they did so much that they went out of their way to, like, do this nice gesture to be like, you guys really, like, made good on your promise and we appreciate it. And now to what Chris just mentioned with the fact that fans are like, we need a way to give you money. Like, whether it's in the form of, like, payable cosmetics or, like, additional or more games that you guys put out, like, we want to dump money into your company because you genuinely care about the people that you're making the games for. It's like, maybe I'm putting too much of a human face on, a company, but it's like, it feels like they genuinely care about, like, the individuals that pick up their games. And that it's not just like another, like, sick, like, they don't look at it. Feels like to me that they don't just look at their player base as like another $60 in the bank per person. Like, these are people who they need the feedback, they need the participation, they need these people, to keep them afloat, and they realize that. And I feel like a lot of game companies maybe lose sight of that. Like, you lose some of the passion and some of the, like, why, like, at your core, why do you make these games?
I think it's a big thing too, is that they're now, 3 years later, they're living their dream of this game that they envisioned. They get to go to work and make a space exploration game, which is, and they're all super passionate about that. And I think that's what continues to drive them of coming out with these patches. 3 years prior, and No Man's Sky isn't going away by any means. I mean, just this year at the Game Awards, they won best continuing game or something along those lines, which is amazing because one of the games that was up for nomination of that was Destiny 2. So No Man's Sky won
Screw them, man.
Won it over Destiny 2. Won it over Call of Duty, won it over Fortnite, won it, these big AAA heavy hitters. They won best continued game, and that's because their community just absolutely loves it and voted for it.
I mean, because, like, Fortnite and, like, Warzone have a pretty, like, intense following, but it's like there's keeping up with your game and, like, keeping your updates rolling out and, dropping the content, some paid, some not, to keep your players happy. But no one can, I mean, it's not even comparable to what No Man's Sky is. It's like it's literally like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Like, like I said before, there has never been, and pray that there never will be another like No Man's Sky situation. Like this should be like a case study in like every like business ethics class that is taught like across the world. Like this is how you handle like bad PR and like the setting of expectations. Like it's there's just it's so much more than just like a game, you know. Like the story of No Man's Sky is something that is it's oddly beautiful in a way, to put it that way, for it being like a video game. You know, I a lot of people who probably don't like aren't into video games, or like they don't understand like the video game culture. They're just like, what's the big deal? It's a game. Like, you know, like Pog's a game. You know, like Pong's a game, Frogger's a game. Like, who cares? Like, it's a game. It's like it's so I don't know. It's just so much more to that, to the people who really care about it, because it's like every game, if you want to like get down to like, if you really want to get, you know, complicated with it, you know, I like games are an art form, you know, like from the graphics to the voice acting to the mechanics. Like you could break down every little bit of it, and it's like, you know, somebody poured their passion into like whatever they worked on. You know, like the design team poured their passion into like all of these vast worlds and creatures, and like and just the space feel and everything. The dev team poured their passion into like the mechanics and everything. And it's like, when you think about all of the hard work that somebody puts into it, it's hard not to like appreciate the effort, you know? And when a team like No Man's Sky puts in that level of effort, it's like it's inspiring that they just, you know, went to work and just didn't stop. Like they put out a game, everybody was against them, and when it would have been really easy for them to have just kind of been like, let's just take the money and run, and then maybe on the next project we can try and like win back some decent PR. They said, no, we're gonna power through with what we got, and whether we go bankrupt or not, we are going to make things right. Like that's incredible. And every other person in the game industry should like look to them and be like, this is how you should run a business, you know, like from an ethical standpoint, and from, you know, like, I don't know if emotional is right, but like when it comes down to like why you're doing the thing that you're doing, No Man's Sky is like the perfect example of what it looks like when you take on a passion project and you take it to the end. Like whether you get hit a million times, you keep picking the ball up and keep running with it until you get to the end zone. And you know, even though I have not played that much of No Man's Sky, I will gladly say that it is maybe one of like the most beautiful games that has ever been released, just for the story alone of what it is. Soapbox over.
And just to give because we spent a lot of time talking about just video games in the industry in general, just to give a state of where the game is now address, is there's still a lot that isn't in the game that was promised in interviews and pre-launch, but there's a lot in the game now that wasn't promised in pre-launch or in interviews. And you know, they started off strong with their Foundations update, which implemented things like base building, which was what the main thing was around. You could put down a base, you could, you know, do all the base building things. It was limited in some ways, but then they also introduced things like farming, which everybody loves farming in any kind of game.
Absolutely. Next week's episode is going to be about Stardew Valley and nothing else.
They also introduced freighters in that update too, which was another huge thing, because a big thing about early No Man's Sky was the grind of inventory space and trying to have you had to keep everything on your person and in your ship and that was all the inventory space you got. So it was bad inventory management. So with freighters, they allowed you to have up to 6 ships that you could put stuff in, and the freighter that you could store stuff in. So it made it a lot easier. Also, like, the bases had some modules that you can put stuff in as well. But yeah, we're 16 updates in to No Man's Sky, and it released in 2016, not 2018. I kept saying that, but so in 4 years they've done 16 updates, which is still
though, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And there's so many things. Some of the the major updates are a little smaller than the other ones, but they still brought something. They still brought major changes to the game that players had wanted. Like, we went from having no multiplayer at all to now we have a player hub that you can summon at a whim, go in, and there, I think it's 32 players can be in the hub at one time. So you can meet 32 strangers at any given time. Just summon the anomaly into your system, go in there, and it's like it's a seamless transition too, to go in there and then bam, players. Where you can launch missions from, you can, with those other players that are in that lobby, so you can all go off and do something, just being strangers. So it connected the galaxy just in that way. We've had updates like we've had Next, and I think it was like Beyond or Origins, one of them that basically graphically overhauled the game. One of them, we had an update that gave full VR support to the game, which
Wow.
I've seen people play VR of No Man's Sky, and it's pretty amazing, from just walking around and also flying in VR. Looks
Oh gosh,
really fun too.
That would be awesome.
We got, like I mentioned earlier, we got the full storyline that came in Atlas Rises, which I'm not a fan of the storyline of No Man's Sky. It's very confusing and vague, but it's also a kind of cool confusing and vague because it has to do with aliens and past memories and stuff like that. That's what makes it so confusing. In one of the earlier updates, which I haven't even explored, and I want to, I haven't explored fully, is the Abyss update, which I'm just scrolling past here on this list, which is full underwater. They did an update to underwater exploration of the game. You got a submarine, you got underwater base parts, you got aggressive creatures that are underwater, and everything like that. So they basically made Subnautica just not as detailed.
They added Subnautica into their game. And then they gave it to you for free.
And then it was probably in 2018 that Beyond came out, and then I think it was Beyond, it was in Next that they added Xbox One into the fold. So Xbox came. More stuff to go into each of these updates would be insane, because there's so many UI changes, so many quality of life changes that they've added to the game, and it's the state that is. If you look at it now versus back at launch, it doesn't even feel like the same game. It still has that core principle, like I said before, of going to a planet, getting the resources to upgrade something or build something, and then going off to another planet. But now there's so much more to do on those planets than there was at launch. The newest update, which I haven't messed around with a whole lot, which is it's a smaller one, but it's cool as well because it's something that they wanted to do and that the community wanted as well. It's their companions update. So in a few updates back, you could get creatures that are on the planet. You could tame them and basically make farms or ranches with these animals, to where you could like milk them or like slaughter them for resources and stuff like that, and breed them and whatnot. And they kind of buckled down on that and made companions to where you can tame them, and then you can outfit them with like a laser. They'll go around mining stuff for you randomly. You can ride them. They have a genetic sequencer on the Space Anomaly, which is the player hub, that you can take the egg to and pretty much just like rewrite it and get like new and weirder species out of the eggs. Like I've seen some crazy ones on TikTok and Reddit of like like Sean Murray retweeted one, which is crazy. Another thing I'll get into in a second, but he retweeted one that was a giant egg, and he was like, I didn't even know they could get that big. Like it was like the size of like a T-Rex, this egg.
Life finds a way.
and he was like, I didn't even know they could get that big. And getting into that, Sean Murray still, he on the subreddit, on their subreddit, he's always like commenting and upvoting on different things that people say about the game. Like he's still 4 years into the game, he's still actively involved in everything that goes on at No Man's Sky, or at Hello Games and No Man's Sky.
Telling you,
that's impressive.
It's passion, man, is what it is. You know, it's an individual like actually caring about like the things that they put out, and you can't put a price tag on that. You know, like it's, gosh, he's, you know, like he really stuck his foot in it when this game dropped, and like all of the press that he did before. And it's like you can tell just from like the interviews that he's not like a comfortable like speaker, you know. And with Sony breathing down your back, like it's hard not to sympathize with him. At least I because I'm terrible as like a public speaker. Like if we ever did this in front of people, I'd be stammering and like it'd be awful. We'd get booed off stage. But you know, like for him to stand, like he went on like Stephen Colbert's show. Like he was going on like late night shows to talk about this game. And it's like, how often do game developers go on to like late night talk show and get asked about the game they're developing? Like that's how big this game was. And you know, like, and you know, he basically just kind of, you know, anything that was asked about, he pretty much was like, yeah, it's in. And they just rolled with it. And now for it to be like this much later after all that bad press, and he's even like interacting directly with like the fan base, like the dude's a-okay in my book.
Oh yeah.
I might go, what's that new game called? I might go buy it.
Last Campfire.
Last Campfire. Boom. I'm gonna add it to my Steam list as soon as we're done recording.
I don't know if it's on Steam yet. It was on Epic.
I'll find it. I'll hunt it down to the ends of the earth. I'll do whatever I have to throw.
I think it's on Switch too, which is probably a better platform for the game. It's because I believe it was designed for mobile.
Well, that is
platforms. Perfect. So, but yeah, state of the game address is, if you haven't played No Man's Sky, and I would pick it up. It's definitely, as a personal thing of mine, I judge games by their value, is not only just like as a flat basis, is if I can get my time per dollar, like hour per dollar out of a game, then it was worth the money. And you know, there's some games that break that mold. You know, there's some games that you can pay $60 for, and in 20 hours you've had a blast of playing it and it's worth the money, or you've put 60 hours into it and it was a dread to get through to finish the game. But for No Man's Sky, it's definitely worth the $60 that it's at. If they stopped updating the game right now, it would still 100% be worth that money.
Oh yeah. And
they always I'm pretty sure every Steam sale, it goes on sale for half price. So pick it up then, or pick it up at full price. Which is just another thing, is they're putting it at half price all the time, so they just want people to play their game. Like, there's always a chance to get on board. But there's some things that I want in the game one, like I said before, paid cosmetics. Give me something to help fund you.
Yeah.
You know, Hello Games, if you ever see this, like, just give us something to fund you. It's games can't run forever on goodwill and hopes and dreams. Like, a lot of people are against having item malls in a game, or having paid content in a game, but depending on where your game's at, if it's free to play now or it's low cost or something like that, you can only live so long off of initial sales. You
Yeah.
have to have something that keeps servers up.
Right.
And with No Man's Sky, I can't imagine how many servers there are for this game.
Oh yeah.
It's because I know not all the planets or universes are online at the same, at any given time, but to be able to go to each of those different planets and boot up that server, or transfer the server that you were like,
it adds up.
Yeah, it adds up.
Yeah.
But I want to paid cosmetics in some way, shape, or form. Don't care what it is. And then my biggest thing, and I think a lot of people's biggest thing, is customizable ships. Because I love the ships in No Man's Sky, but at times they can just be random clusters of other ships. You can have a ship with one wing and a thruster on the other side, and it just looks wonky. But it's like an S class, and you're like, I can't pass up an S class. So it ship customization, and I think they have the stuff there for it. I just think they just haven't gotten to it yet. I think it will come, because once again, it's something that the community's verbal about and wants. So they haven't stopped giving us stuff that we wanted, and stuff we didn't know we needed.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure they'll keep pumping it out, and it's only a matter of time before they get to all that stuff. Because I definitely see them at some point, like, finishing this laundry list of things. It might take longer for some things than others. Some things that they might not have still delivered on, or even if people still even want them, for that fact. Like, with all the updates they rolled out, I'm sure that some of the things that they maybe originally promised could be obsolete now by something like bigger and better that they've rolled out over the past 4 years.
Yeah, I don't, like I said before, I don't see them stopping or going away anytime soon, because they're still, like, I was just on the Steam page and it says they've received over 50 awards over the lifetime of their game.
Dang.
So, and I think they just got, I don't know if they won. I know they got nominated for a reward in Britain or the UK, one of their game award shows, for like labor of love or something. And it's definitely a story. It definitely transcends what video games is, and shows how a developer should listen to their fan base and actually fix their game. And I mean, Destiny did fix their game. They just
put a price tag on it.
They put a price tag on it.
They held it hostage.
Yeah.
You had to pay a ransom in order to play a finished product.
Yeah, and then basically lose your $60 2 years later because they go free to play. But I digress.
We're not bitter.
So, yeah, not at all. Hopefully game companies learn from what No Man's Sky did, and I kind of see that approach happening with CD Projekt Red right now, because they have gone pretty radio silent over this, over Cyberpunk, which is a whole nother video.
Yeah.
And I mean, Bethesda didn't learn from it, but
one can only hope that they're attempting to fix the issues and they're not just planning another Witcher card game. So
you don't want Gwent 2?
Well, that's it for us, everybody. I won't answer that. Oh gosh. All right, we've been harping on the video game industry for better part of an hour now. So I think we're probably gonna wrap it up there, gentlemen. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. If you enjoyed this in-depth conversation about whether game companies should provide ethical services to their their player bases, then by all means, let us know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye bye.